Oh, fantastic. Well, first of all, Happy New Year to everyone. It's great to see you all, or at least hear your voices. Some of you are on video, some of you are on the phone. And based on a little feedback last year, we decided to make these meetings less frequent and but maybe a little longer. I think that new format will serve us well. It also gives us the chance to focus these meetings a little bit more on specific topics. So hopefully you will find this to be as at least as effective as before, and hopefully a little more effective and a little more time sensitive for everyone. We have a new director, and I'm so delighted to see her face this morning. We'll speak about that a little bit more, and if you will just give us a moment, because we'll appoint you to the board in just a moment. Let me start with a little formality, though, of just taking the role of the board. This is Martin. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready, Mr. Chair.
Okay. This is Charlie Klippel.
Paul Philpott.
Yes. Here.
CC Woods.
Here.
Thomas McNeil.
Here.
Grant Ritter.
Here.
Dietrich Gifford.
Present.
Thank you. Stephen Hernandez. Matthew Brockman.
Here.
Commissioner Andrea Burton Reeves from Department of Social Services.
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning. Claudia Gualtieri on behalf of Secretary Jeffrey Beckham from OPM.
Morning, I'm here.
Good morning. Pedro Dolittle from OHA.
Hi, here.
Thank you. Commissioner Nancy Navarrete from DMS. Paul Lombardo on behalf of Commissioner Andrew Mays, Connecticut Insurance Department. Commissioner Manisha Tutani from Department of Public Health.
Present.
Thank you. That concludes our attendance for the board.
Thanks, Marcin. And if I could ask the officers of the company to introduce themselves as well.
Good morning, James Michel, the Chief Executive Officer for Access Health Connecticut. Gina, you want to introduce yourself, Gina?
Yes. Gina Walsh, Director of Operations.
Good morning, Daryl Jones, Director of Finance.
Good morning, Rebecca McClear, Director of Technical Operations and Analytics.
Good morning, Susan Rich-By, Director of Legal and Governmental Affairs.
Good morning, Caroline Lee Ruette, Director of Marketing.
Good morning, Director of Small Group and Product Development, John Carbone.
Good morning, everyone. Glenn Jurgen, Director of Human Resources, Access Health Connecticut.
Good morning, Tammy Hendricks, Director of Health Equity and Outreach, Access Health Connecticut.
Good morning, Janelle Maloney, Director of Information Technology.
Mr. Chairman, this concludes our introduction.
Terrific. Thank you all very much. And again, Happy New Year to everybody. We have no public comment. Is that correct, Marcin?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. And I just want to let you know that Mr. Stephen Hernandez just joined the meeting.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much. And so we get to move on to a delightful thing in my book. It is always nice to welcome a new member to this board. Andrea and I have known each other for quite a long time, and I am so delighted that she is joining our board as the new commissioner of DSS. It is so nice that we get to have you, and it's doubly nice that we keep your predecessor on the board, which means that we get the best of both worlds. So Andrea, welcome your opportunity to say a few words just to by way of introduction, and then we will officially swear you in.
Great. So thank you. I am really delighted to be here. I have worked, actually, James and I worked before together when I was over at paid leave. I have to say in front of his board, he was incredibly helpful. Particularly when it came time to help us choose a third-party administrator, a vendor for claims. He gave us enormous amounts of very valuable advice. I really want to thank him publicly for that. I'm delighted to be here. I'm looking forward to our partnership, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. We look forward to having you on the board. I think, Susan, I will turn to you to do the official swearing in.
Thank you. And actually, the swearing in is actually for Dr. Gifford as opposed to Andrea
Oh,
Barton
I'm
Reeves.
sorry. I'm sorry. That's
No,
correct.
it's no problem. I'm so excited, to have the welcomes for Andrea. So I didn't want to say anything. The swearing in requirement of taking an oath is for the appointed board members. So Dr. Gifford is actually transitioning from an ex officio board member as the former commissioner of the Department of Social Services to now being one of the governor's appointed members of this board. So we just have to have her take an oath today. So if you will raise your right hand, please. You solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that you will faithfully discharge, according to law, your duties as a member of the Board of Directors of Access Health Connecticut to the best of your abilities, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Terrific. So as I say, we are fortunate to have you remain on our board. It is terrific. The next item, I believe, is approving the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes from the last meeting? If not, can I have a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve. This is Grant Ritter.
Thanks, Grant. Second?
Seconded, Tom McNeil.
Thanks, Tom. Charlie Klippel, yes.
Mr. Chair, is there any discussion on the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut off discussion. Is there
Sorry.
any discussion? All right, thank you. Hearing none. Charlie Klippel, yes.
Thank you. Paul Philpott,
Yes.
Claudia Gualtieri,
Yes.
Deidre Gifford,
Yes.
Grant Ritter,
Yes.
Stephen Hernandez,
Yes.
Andrea Barton Reeves.
I'll abstain because I wasn't present.
Thank you. Theodore Doolittle,
Yes.
CC Woods, Thomas McNeil,
Yes.
and Matthew Brackman.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all. The next item of business is to elect a vice chair. This is an annual requirement, and the role has been filled, and I think filled very well. And I'm very grateful to Paul Philpott for being the vice chair. I would like to suggest Paul continue in that role, but I invite any other comments or nominations for vice chairman for the board of directors, or any discussion on the topic.
Does that need a second, Charlie?
It does. So if hearing no discussion on the matter, if you are all in agreement, I would appreciate a motion to elect Paul Philpott as the vice chair of the board.
I'll make the motion, Ted Doolittle.
Thank you, Ted. Second?
I'll second it.
Terrific. Thank you very much. This is Charlie Klippel. Absolutely yes.
Thank you. Paul Philpott,
Yes.
Claudia Gualtieri,
Yes.
Deidre Gifford,
Yes.
Grant Ritter, Stephen Hernandez.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I vote yes. Steve, yes.
Thank you. Andrea Barton Reeves,
Yes.
Theodore Doolittle,
Yes.
CC Woods, Thomas McNeil,
Yes.
and Matthew Brackman.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Terrific. Very, very helpful. And Paul, thank you again for your service in that role. The next vote, I will allow, I'll ask Susan just to give us a moment to talk about the removal and the replacement of a member of the Plan Benefits Committee.
Thank you again. I'll take a moment here just to offer our thank you. Neil Kelsey has served on the Health Plan Benefits and Qualifications Advisory Committee since 2017, and he has just done a tremendous job for the committee and for Access Health and the exchange. He retired at the beginning of this month in his role as Chief Actuary for Connecticut. So he is stepping down from the committee. But in his place, we have Brandon Riff, who we're also recommending that the board add to the committee. Brandon is an associate vice president and actuary for Emblem Health and Connecticut, and he is responsible for overseeing pricing, forecasting, and product development for all commercial products in New York and Connecticut. And he's also involved in assessing and developing strategic initiatives for the company and has worked with them for a number of years. So we're very happy and fortunate to have Brandon step into Neil's shoes, hopefully, to serve on this committee. So I will leave it to you for discussion and motions.
Hi, this is Grant Ritter. I'd like to make a motion to add Brad to the board. I'm sorry, to the advisory committee. May I say that I worked with Neil for many, many years, and he was extremely helpful as a very, very opinionated member of the committee. And it's very helpful to have people from the industry, from the carriers, have their input into the committee. It makes doing the job a lot easier. Having said that, I second what was said about Neil being so helpful in the past. So I make the motion.
Mr. Chair, we need to have 2 votes. The first vote will be to remove Mr. Neil Kelsey from the committee, and the second vote will be to add Mr. Brandon Riff.
Terrific. No, thank you for the reminder. Let me just see if there's any further discussion first on either one, and then we'll do the 2 votes sequentially.
Point of order, I think we do need a second on my motion.
Yes, we do. Actually, we need a motion to remove Neil, I think.
Yeah, okay. I'll make a motion to remove Neil. I see. You need 2 separate motions. Okay. Motion to remove Neil.
Thank you. Thank you. Whoever seconded just then. Charlie Klippel, yes.
Is there discussion on the motion, Mr. Chair?
I don't think so, but I will pause again for a moment and see. Is there any discussion? Thank you. With hearing none, Charlie Klippel, yes.
Thank you. Paul Philpott?
Yes.
Claudia Gualtieri?
Yes.
Dietrich Gifford?
Yes.
Grant Ritter?
Yes.
Steven Hernandez?
Yes.
Andrea Barton Reeves?
Yes.
Thank you. Theodore Doolittle?
Yes, with appreciation to Neil for his contribution.
CC Woods? Thomas McNeil?
Yes.
And Matthew Brackman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Marcin, if you would have the minutes reflect all of our appreciation for his service. It was that he served with us for a number of years, and we were grateful for it.
Certainly.
The second vote is to approve Brandon Riff to essentially take his place on the Health Plan Benefits and Qualifications Advisory Committee. So I think we already have a nomination for that from Grant. Is there any discussion of his appointment?
Mr. Chair, first of all, if necessary, I'll second the motion and thank Mr. Riff for offering to serve. I just wondered, Grant, or whoever has the list, could you just remind us the composition of this committee? It's obviously a really important committee when it comes to our plan design every year, and the board relies heavily on their advice and feedback. And Grant, you referred to members of the industry. Who else serves on the committee? I just can't recall.
Marcin, can you read that, or somebody that has the list in front of them?
Sure.
Yes.
Susan, can you get some background? The makeup of the committee. It has board members. It has industry representatives as well as advocates.
Okay.
Susan, very quickly, so that the whole board get the full picture.
Sure. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Yes, as James mentioned, it is a mix of people. We have several board members. Grant Ritter is the chair of the committee. Ted Doolittle also serves on the committee. Matthew Brockman, Commissioner Giuttani serves on the committee. I think those are all the board members. And then we have a representative from each carrier, an actuary. So we have 2 Nguyen from Anthem, and it was previously Neil Kelsey and potentially Brandon Riff for Connecticut. And then we have other members of organizations that have valuable input. For instance, Mark Schaefer from the Connecticut Hospital Association. Ellen Skinner has served on the committee for a number of years. She's worked in the health insurance industry for a long, long time. There's some other members of the committee that are on the committee, but aren't so active on the committee, from the Connecticut Association of Optometrists, and also someone from the Pharmacist Association. But, and excuse me, and Paul Lombardo serves as a subject matter expert for the committee. So we really get a variety of feedback into the QHP certification requirements, and probably most specifically on the standard plan designs.
Susan, is 2 on the list for?
Yeah, I mentioned, sorry, I mentioned that
Okay.
earlier,
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah, we
Nguyen serves, sorry,
two,
as
right.
the actuary from Anthem.
Yeah.
And in the very beginning of time, just for everybody, we didn't have representatives from both carriers on the committee, and we just found it really didn't make sense not to have their input at that step of the process. It really helped us create the standard plan designs that the carriers could both pass, you know, on actuarial value and parity, and getting their input too, because their data is different from the data that our outside actuaries have, claims data that they use to run through those federal tools. So it really has been helpful over the years. And they each, you know, just had their one vote, also with all of the rest of the members of the committee.
Thank
Dr.
you,
Gifford,
Susan.
it should be noted that it is a very engaged committee. Every member is very engaged and vocal about their points of view. So we think that we get a very good product coming out of that committee. Anyway, because everyone's involved, every meeting we have is usually well attended, and opinions are expressed without any concerns. So it really is. And I would invite all the board members, if you are able to attend, please attend. Then you get a full flavor of the product that comes to the board for vote. It's been well thought out, well discussed before it comes to the board.
Thank you, James.
Thank you for the question. Ted Doolittle has a question, I believe.
Yes, thank you. I have served on the committee for a number of years. It is not a pleasant committee to serve on, because you're taking away rather than giving usually, unfortunately, from the consumer standpoint. I did want to ask, we for many years had a representative from the Universal Health Foundation of Connecticut, Jill Zorn. She's not on anymore. Is there any thought to soliciting somebody from Universal or from another similar organization to join?
Yes, Ted. We are looking. We are looking to recruit somebody from the Universal Health or the Connecticut Health Foundation to be part of it. So, and we'll come back to the board once we have that person. We'll come back to the board for his or her appointment to the committee.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this point? If not, I believe we have a motion and a second to approve Brandon Riff's appointment to the committee. And I will take those, and Charlie Klippel, yes.
Thank you. Paul Philpott?
Yes.
Claudia Gualtieri?
Yes.
Deidre Gifford?
Yes.
Grant Ritter?
Yes.
Steve Hernandez?
Yes.
Andrea Barton Reeves?
Yes.
Commissioner, thank you. Theodore Doolittle?
Yes.
CC Woods? Thomas McNeil?
Yes.
And Matthew Brackman?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all. The floor is now yours, James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. Good morning, all. I'm James Michel, the Chief Executive Officer of Access Health Connecticut. Welcome to our January board meeting, and Happy New Year to all. and thank you for joining us this morning. Before we get started, I want to note that we are now officially in our 10th anniversary year. Access Health Connecticut opened its doors of operations back in October 1, 2013. And when we launched our first open enrollment period for 2014, we were among the best health insurance marketplaces in the nation, and we continue to be in that position today. That is because of the great leadership and support our board continues to provide us, as well as our dedicated staff who believe in our mission and deliver on it every day. As we begin our second decade, it is time for us to plan for the future of Access Health Connecticut. I'm working with Steve Hernandez, Chairman of the Strategy Committee, to take a look at our 5 to 10 year strategic approach. We will be looking to many of you for your input on this strategy. Much more to come on that in the months ahead. I'm excited to share that Access Health Connecticut was once again recognized by the Hartford Business Journal as one of the best places to work for in Connecticut. This is for the 4th consecutive year. This award is a well-deserved testament to our entire team. Their dedication and collaborative spirit make it a pleasure to come to work every day. I would also like to welcome 2 board members. As been stated earlier, Dr. Deidre Gifford is returning as a board member appointed by Governor Lamont and has begun a new role as Executive Director of the Connecticut Office Health Strategies. Welcome, Dr. Gifford, and thank you for continuing to serve on our board. And we appreciate your input and your leadership as well.
I just want everyone to know that when I decided to make this switch, I really wanted to make sure I stayed on the Access Health Board. So I'm grateful to Governor Lamont for the appointment and glad to still be with you.
Thank you.
Terrific.
I would also like to welcome Andrea Barton-Reeve, the new Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Social Services. And I've communicated with Andrea that Access Health is committed. We continue to do our part to support DSS. And as you know, DSS and Access Health, we've had a long-standing relationship since we started, and we share operational as well as technology functions. And we will continue to work to support DSS as they continue to support us as well. Partnership has been great for us and for them, and we look forward to continue to a very successful partnership.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
As you may have noted, as Charlie indicated earlier, we updated our meeting schedule going forward. We plan to have fewer meetings per year. Our meetings will be more focused, and then that's all done with the intent of making the best use of our time together as efficiently and as effectively as possible. We value your time, so we want to make sure we make good use of it. Regarding our meeting today, we will begin with a review of open enrollment period results from Rebecca McClear, Director of Technical Operations and Analytics. Open enrollment ended this past Sunday on January 15th. Following that, Susan Richby, Director of Legal and Government Affairs, will give a report from the Health Plan Benefit Qualification Advisory Committee, which met for the first time last week. Susan will review new state deadlines, which will impact our time, this board's timeline, to review in the certification requirements for plan year 2024. Julie Andrews will follow Susan. She is the Senior Consulting Actuary with Wakely Consulting, and she will present the adverse selection study for the 2023 plan year. We will also welcome another guest speaker today, Peter Hadler, Director of the Division of Program Oversight and Grant Administration from the Department of Social Services. Peter will provide a presentation about plans for Medicaid unwinding over the next 12 months, starting on April 1st. If time permits, Susan Richby will conclude the meeting with a legal and policy update on the Affordable Care Act. Mr. Chairman, I will pause now if there are any questions. Otherwise, we could move on to Rebecca.
Thank you, James. Are there any questions? If not, then Rebecca, if you would be so kind.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. As James mentioned, my name is Rebecca McClear. I'm the current Director of Technical Operations and Analytics. I transitioned into this role in September of 2022, but did work closely with Rob Blendo as part of the TOA team for the past 5 years. So I am excited today to share some of the highlights from the recent open enrollment with everyone. As James mentioned, this meeting is occurring less than a week, just a few days from the end of open enrollment, and therefore I will be sharing a brief overview of some of the key open enrollment metrics to get a feel for how things went. But keep in mind, a comprehensive report containing the full open enrollment results will be presented at the next board meeting. So starting off, I want to look at the call center activity. Since November 1st, our call center, or T-Tech, has handled over 200,000 phone calls and 21,000 chat sessions. This does represent a 9% decrease in call volume and a 14% decrease in chat sessions as compared to last open enrollment. This is the 5th year in a row that we observed a decreased volume to our call center, which is one metric for our continuing organizational goal to expand customer self-service capabilities. Looking at enrollment and eligibility activity, the end of open enrollment, we stand at 108,132 individuals enrolled into a qualified health plan. This is about 4% less than where we ended open enrollment last year. However, it is aligned with our forecasted volume of 108,000 enrollees. Due to the expanded Covered Connecticut eligibility criteria, which took effect on July 1st of 2022, the number of individuals enrolled in the Covered Connecticut program increased significantly to over 15,000 individuals. This open enrollment also saw the integration of the standalone dental program into the existing eligibility determination and shopping experience. Consumers also had more plan options, with both Anthem and Connecticut Insurance Company, Inc. offering dental plans on the exchange this year. As a result, we saw dental enrollment nearly double. Overall, nearly 8% of our health plan enrollees are now also enrolled into a standalone dental plan. Additionally, over 600 individuals chose to enroll in a dental plan only. The percentage of enrollees eligible for financial help this year is up 2.1 percentage points over last year. And this year, we saw the number of new applicants receiving a Medicaid determination during open enrollment drop slightly. We do believe this may be associated with overall improvements in the Connecticut economy. Next slide, Mark. From a demographics perspective, the medical customer base looks very similar to last year's, with a slight increase in the average age and the number of covered enrollees per household. As most of the dental enrollees are also included in the medical customer base, it's no surprise that the numbers are similar in each category. Finally, across both medical and dental policies, we see nearly 80% of our enrollees come from 3 counties: Fairfield, Hartford, and New Haven counties. A quick overview of customer shopping trends and preferences shows a slight increase in the number of customers who are associated with brokers across counties has increased, ranging from a 0.1% increase in Windham County to 2.9% in Middlesex. Also, the proportion of customers selecting a silver plan is at 49.6%, which is slightly up 1.5 percentage points over last year's. While this is the 3rd year in a row we've seen the selection of silver tier plans increase, we do see that nearly 4% of the enrollees have upgraded from a bronze plan, and we suspect that the expansion of the covered CT eligibility to be a factor, along with the enhanced subsidies allowing consumers to purchase more comprehensive coverage. While we'll break out the premiums in much greater detail in our full report next month, at a very high level, we saw a median gross premium, or premium before APTC, of $847 per month, and the median net premium, or premium after APTC, of $94. This is a 25% increase in the median gross premium over last year's, due primarily to the rate increases that we saw for 2023. However, due to the increased financial help available to consumers, the median net premium remained unchanged. Our retention rate this year, or the volume of 2022 enrollees that are now enrolled in a 2023 medical plan, was down slightly from last year. And like prior years, the largest percentage of attrition is the active cancellation or termination reason, which indicates that the consumer chose not to renew coverage for 2023. Additional details on these reasons will be discussed in the full report next month. It is worth noting, however, that most of those who retained coverage chose to remain in the same metal tier plans. Finally, 86% of our enrollees are receiving financial help. This is a 2.1% percentage point improvement over last year. We do continue to pay attention to the unsubsidized portion of our customer base, and we did see a decrease in the number of applicants who chose to forgo eligibility for eligibility determinations for Husky or financial help for QHP. Next slide, Martin. Thank you. Finally, a few brief updates regarding upcoming dates and milestones. So the continuous Medicaid coverage provision continues to play a major role in our efforts to keep the Connecticut residents insured. We currently have nearly 430 individuals who are able to retain their Medicaid benefits. As of January 11th, the Department of Health and Human Services has extended the public health emergency for another 90 days. However, the Consolidated Appropriations Act passed in late December 2022, and the Medicaid extension unwinding has been decoupled from the PHE. Therefore, the Medicaid maintenance of eligibility provision will end on March 31st, triggering terminations in April of 2023. As previously promised by then Commissioner Gifford, Peter Hadler from DSS will be presenting additional details regarding the coordinated communication and technology strategy to support the retention of coverage for this group during the 12-month unwinding process. This should hopefully address any questions you may have on this topic. From a consumer standpoint, in order to use their 2023 coverage, they do need to pay their first month premium. Based on information we've received from our carriers, 87% of medical plan consumers have paid this premium and are now considered active. The customers who have yet to make their first premium payments and effectuate for January or February medical coverage will be receiving communications from both Access Health and their carrier to encourage them to effectuate their policies. Communication of effectuation for the 2023 dental policies is due from carriers by the end of this month, so we don't have a complete picture at this time of the effectuation status of those policies. Finally, our consumers should expect us to deliver their 1095s to them shortly after January 24th. These forms will help them reconcile their premium tax credits when filing their 2022 taxes. Customers can also receive these electronically from our website. However, in the event they need assistance, we have ramped up our team dedicated to addressing these issues for the duration of the tax season. And then one final reminder, as I mentioned, we will have the detailed end of open enrollment report ready for the board by the next meeting. However, in the meantime, if there are any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. I have a question, and I know a couple other directors do as well. My question has to do with the 80% of folks coming out of 3 counties. I can understand that because of the big cities in those counties, but is that, do we know how that compares to the eligibility demographics or eligibility for subsidy demographics of Connecticut? Are we missing New London or other places, or is that about consistent with the population as a whole?
I don't have that information in front of me right now, but I will get back to you on that. I'll pull that up and share that information with you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Dr. Gifford, I think I'm doing this out of order, but I'll start with you. Oh, I think you're on mute though.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to defer. I was late to the party raising my hand. I think Ted was before me.
That's all right. We'll do it.
Okay. I'll jump in. It's, I think, a quick question. So the individuals who have not effectuated their coverage, can you tell us, because we've been talking a little bit about this population and how we can assist and make sure that they actually get enrolled. Can you tell us how you define that? Is it that they get all the way through the application, but they don't pay? And is there another group that we also think may be put off by the need to pay that we're not capturing in this 86%? Is that, am I clear with my question?
I think so, Commissioner Gifford. So,
okay.
From the effectuation status is based on when the individuals pay that premium to the carriers, and then the carriers tell us, yes, they've paid. So there is a slight delay in that information getting through to us, just the amount of time it takes to process the payment at the carrier and then tell us. So this 86 or 87% is on par with where we normally are in January at this time of year for prior years. So we're not concerned at this point. So just to clarify on the definition of effectuation and what that means. As far as folks who struggle to maybe aren't paying that January premium, I don't have information on the volumes of that. We can definitely look into it. I know we've been talking on some other calls and other forums on that population. So I don't have insight into that right now, but I can say the numbers we're seeing this year are on par with prior years.
So, Dr. Gifford, you know what, the analysis we're going to do between now and the next meeting, we could look at, we could break that group down as to, are there people who are paying full premium or people who are subsidized, and see what the range is. So I know.
I think that would be helpful. Yeah.
I know what your thoughts are about that, but if we break it down, we get a better picture who makes up that group, then that might be helpful for what we're thinking about doing down the road.
Thank you. Ted, thank you very much for your patience.
No patience whatsoever. Always happy to defer to Commissioner Gifford or Director Gifford, excuse me. Yeah, just one quick comment, which is first I want to thank Access Health for my staff, as you know, handles consumer phone calls all day, and we're anxious about the unwinding. And Access Health has agreed to provide some training for OHA staff, and I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that and say thanks. My question has to do with the overall marketplace enrollment as a whole across the country appears to be on pace for a pretty big gain, perhaps 13%. But something has emerged in the data that's very interesting that perhaps we can touch on when you do your fuller report next time, Rebecca. But it seems that the increase is coming exclusively from the federal marketplace states, and that the 18 states that run state-based programs are actually down 3%. And I think that's very interesting. I have no idea what the dynamics that might be causing that are. I wanted to draw that to the board's attention and flag it as something to perhaps dig into when you do the full open enrollment report. Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Ted. That is an interesting statistic. And Rebecca, if you can get any insight into that, that would be terrific.
Ted, I will just,
sorry.
Claudia, sorry for butting in, but just to respond to Ted, I don't have any data on this, but as you know, there's a strong correlation between states that use the FFM, the federal marketplace, and non-Medicaid expansion states.
Yes.
Most of the non-expansion states are on the federal marketplace, and I am going to guess that with unwinding looming on the horizon in non-expansion states and the increase in premium assistance, that a lot of people in those states who realize they're going to come off Medicaid are being driven to the exchange. That's one, I think, potential explanation.
Well, it's an explanation for part of it. It's an explanation for the increase in the federal states, but we're seeing a slight decrease in the SBM states. And that's interesting to me.
Yeah. So, Dr. Gifford, in addition to what you said, when the Biden administration took over, they ramped up more marketing money as well in the FFM states. I think that contributed a lot
Oh, yeah.
to the growth as well. I mean, we probably have seen the commercials for the FFM in Connecticut, even though we're not an FFM
Yes.
state. But that may be the biggest driver is the fact that
Yeah.
they've spent a whole lot more marketing as well as partnering with community-based organizations. And Ted, the other anecdotal evidence for us in terms of drop is the fact that the unemployment is pretty low over the last several years across the entire country, but particularly in Connecticut. So that may be one of the drivers where that's driving down. But again, we'll look at all the details and report back to the board next week. But that's just an overall observation on my part on both FFM as well as Connecticut. Unemployment is driving down the state-based marketplace enrollment numbers, and the increased marketing and outreach on FFM is driving up their numbers as well. And also they have the biggest gap to grow from. The FFM states. So that in fact they may be catching up.
Yeah, no,
The rest of the
those are all
country.
good news stories, but as I say, I do think we want to understand as much as we can about what's going on, especially with the depression in the SBM enrollment across the country. You're right that maybe it's a happy story of employment, but it's good to dig into it a little bit and make sure we understand it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that. Claudio.
Thank you, Charlie. Two questions. One regarding the enrollment and the encouraging news that Rebecca shared that some of our residents in Connecticut have chosen to move from bronze to the silver and take advantage and draw down all those cost share subsidies that have been now extended at the federal level. I saw the number as encouraging, but at the same time, I can't help but wonder if there's a lot of bronze enrollees that could and are leaving lots of cost share federal subsidies on the table. Wondering if we can dig into the current makeup of those that chose the bronze plan, in particular those that may be under 250% of FPL and are leaving behind all the cost share reductions that they would be eligible for under a silver plan, but are not benefiting from under the bronze. So I don't know if you have that, but if maybe by a way of a follow-up, I'd love to dig into that, because if that's a barrier, we should be looking at some practices in other states where there's sort of a nudge or an opt-in to that much more robust coverage that maximizes all the federal supports, and learn from what states have done to smooth that pathway into the silver CSR eligible plans. The second question, and then you can respond to both as you see fit. On Covered Connecticut, I am again encouraging news, 15,000. James, I remember when we were, just in the infancy of this program, I don't think in our wildest dreams we would have saw the success. And to think that we're at 15,000 and now positioned to also enroll so many more of our residents onto this program with the unwinding of the public health emergency, I think is a credit to you and all the work you've done behind the scenes and in the front of the House to make that happen. As we continue to move forward and monitor that program, I think what would be helpful is to report out how many are completely new enrollees that never had health care or never were on the exchange, and then for the first instance came on to Covered Connecticut, versus those that on the back end we were able to attribute, they were already on the exchange, but we were able to get them the full Covered Connecticut benefits. And to the extent we can report out on those two lanes, I think would inform policy and understanding of the efficacy of the program and where we maybe want to refine. So take the questions as you will, including if you want to punt to next time and we can get updates.
Sure. Thank you. The very first question we'll probably get back. We have to dig into the data and break the bronze numbers down, and at the next month's meeting. But the other data point now, yes, we could definitely break that down as to who are brand new to Cover Connecticut and or who transitioned from QHP to Cover Connecticut. And also, we're going to be tracking as people roll off Medicaid unwind and don't qualify for Medicaid but enroll into Cover Connecticut. We're going to track that as well on a monthly basis and report back to the board as well. So those are future evolutions, but next month we should be able to give you breakdown both of the question 1 and question 2 as we move forward. The Medicaid unwinding, we track that and report that to the board as well.
Thank you very much.
Terrific. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, Rebecca, we've left you with a little homework, but thank you so much for giving us that update, and we look forward to your further update next month. With that, let me thank Peter Hadler for joining us today and give you the floor.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many familiar faces here. My name is Peter Hadler. I'm the Director of Program Oversight and Grant Administration at the Department of Social Services, overseeing eligibility and enrollment policy for the department's programs, and happy to be here to talk a little bit about the public health emergency unwinding. This is sort of a quick highlight of things that are going on and the most recent changes that have occurred to the process based on recent federal law changes. Happy to provide additional information if anyone has questions at the end. There's lots more facets to unwinding that I'd be happy to talk about as well. So just to kick us off very quickly, what does unwinding mean? I think many of you are very familiar with this concept, but during the public health emergency, Connecticut, like most other states, adopted a lot of flexibilities to be able to support residents during the pandemic. And we adopted a lot of these through Medicaid and CHIP. That were all tied initially to the Public Health Emergency Declaration, which is authorized in 90-day increments by the Secretary of Health and Human Services at the federal level. That has recently changed, as I'll get to in the next slide. But I just want to quickly note, right, unwinding is the term that we've been using and we've been continuing to use during the most recent months and will be for the next year as we plan how to take steps to end the public health emergencies, flexibilities and provisions. And the goal is to ensure that we can transition back to normal operations efficiently while limiting coverage disruptions, both from the state perspective and from the enrollee perspective. Next slide, please. So the key eligibility provisions that we implemented during the public health emergency are the ones that people are most familiar with and the ones that I'm going to focus on today. There are two major areas of eligibility expansion that we conducted during the public health emergency. The continuous Medicaid enrollment requirement is perhaps the one that draws the most attention for good reason. This was originally established at the beginning of the pandemic by the Families First Coronavirus Response Act and was required for the state to be able to receive enhanced federal medical assistance percentage, or FMAP as it is commonly referred to. The basic concept behind this rule is that we had to provide continuous enrollment to anyone who enrolled in Medicaid on or after March 2020 through the end of the declared public health emergency. As I referenced earlier, the Secretary of HHS can declare that emergency in up to 90-day increments, and it has been renewed at this point 12 times, spanning now a full 3 years since the beginning of the pandemic declaration. So this has changed. This is big news for us collectively. I will describe a little bit more about what the changes are to that on the next slide. But I also just wanted to make note that there has been another significant eligibility coverage that we have been providing during the public health emergency. This is the COVID-19 testing coverage for the uninsured. And we also instituted a parallel emergency Medicaid COVID-19 testing coverage for those folks who couldn't qualify for Medicaid due to their immigration status. That has allowed us to provide Connecticut residents who are not eligible for other forms of health insurance coverage with the ability to access COVID-19 testing, vaccinations, and related treatment. So that provision and that rule has not changed. That is still associated with the federal declaration of a public health emergency and will continue to exist up until the last day of that declaration. And it will end immediately on the day that the public health emergency ends. Next slide, please. So what has changed is the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023, also known as the Omnibus Spending Bill, which just passed about 3 weeks ago now on December 29th, and it had some major provisions related to Medicaid and CHIP and will be very much affecting the way we conduct the unwinding. So to get a little bit more into that, the big thing is that they decouple health emergency debt from the continuous enrollment. So while we have been carefully monitoring this 90-day increments for years at this point, sort of with bated breath, waiting to see when the public health emergency will end, the continuous enrollment provision is going to end on March 31st, 2023. That was decided by Congress and then put into the Consolidated Appropriations Act. So there's no longer a waiting and a cycle of preparing every 90 days. Now we have a date, and we are working towards that because that will start our unwinding process. So that means that beginning on April 1st, we can begin to terminate Medicaid enrollment for individuals who are no longer eligible. We still have 12 months to smooth out this process. Not everyone is going to get a renewal in March or April of 2023 and be expected to reestablish their eligibility. We're going to stagger this process over a 12-month period, looking very closely at our existing operations to ensure that we can maintain smooth operations, which is one of the goals that CMS has set for states and one that we have embraced. We're really looking to and have finalized an approach where we will be as evenly as possible, staggering out the population that has been extended through the continuous enrollment provision over a 12-month period starting in March. Next slide, please. Another major change from the Consolidated Appropriations Act involves the federal medical assistance percentage. This has been at 6.2%, the enhanced FMAP during the entire public health emergency. This is a big deal. This has driven hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to states, and to our state in particular, during the pandemic. And there will now be a phase out of this that sort of aligns with the unwinding process that has been prescribed by CMS and now by Congress. So over a stage of 4 quarters, it will be winding down from 6.2%, where it currently is, and it will go back down to the regular FMAP starting January 1st, 2024. And you can see on the slide here, it's going to go from 6.2 to 5 to 2.5 to 1.5. So each quarter, the FMAP will decline as we anticipate that more people will go through the Medicaid renewal process, and some folks will certainly lose coverage as part of that process, whether for failure to complete the process entirely or because they've had a change in circumstances, perhaps income, that makes them no longer eligible for Medicaid. Next slide, please. Several other provisions came out in the Consolidated Appropriations Act, which are of interest. I've selected a few here just to highlight that we are still required to conduct our renewal process in compliance with federal requirements. CMS has issued a lot of guidance to states over the past couple of years, and it has been a bit of a whirlwind in the last few months as we have been digesting the new federal law and preparing for the unwinding. So we are constantly watching and waiting for the next CMS set of guidance to clarify the high level requirements that have been set forth in the Consolidated Appropriations Act. One of the ones that we know is coming is that we have to use the National Change of Address database to ensure that everyone has up-to-date contact information for mail contacts. This is something that we will need to implement rapidly over the next couple of months. We have done some pilot work on this, so we feel relatively confident that we'll be able to meet this requirement and integrate it into our process. Obviously, the intent is to minimize returned mail. However, there is also another provision that is associated with the mail, and this is that we're not allowed to disenroll anyone who's ineligible for Medicaid just because we couldn't get to them when we sent them a piece of mail. So we have to take that returned mail that we get from a household and make a good faith effort to contact the individual using more than one modality, such as telephone or email. And so that is something we are working on right now and trying to figure out how to operationalize that in the best way possible. Next slide, please. Yet another provision that just came out in the new law is that we have enhanced reporting requirements. CMS had already asked states to plan to submit a number of reporting elements related to unwinding, and now Congress has expanded the categories that we need to report on. Some of the things that we're going to be reporting on during the public health emergency, and this will all be public reporting, and CMS will be publishing it publicly, include the number of eligibility renewals that are initiated, the numbers that are renewed and terminated, The numbers that are terminated for procedural reasons, the numbers transferred for enrollment in CHIP or through an exchange, and the numbers who made a qualified health plan selection. So this is going to require DSS and Access Health to continue our close partnership in the unwinding work to ensure that we have all the data we need to be able to report out to CMS, because there's a pretty big hammer that CMS has behind the scenes if we're unable to comply with the reporting requirements, which is that we could lose up to 1% of our federal medical assistance percentage if we're unable to provide the reports that are required. So we have a head start because we knew a lot of these elements were already in the CMS requirements set for unwinding, but we have new and additional elements that we need to be able to report on. And we really need to sort of follow each cohort of people as they go through the renewal process to see where they're landing. I think this is something of much interest to everyone already. So it's the fact that it's a formality just means that we may have to do it even faster than we were planning to. But this is something we are looking forward to getting the information on so we can really measure how we're performing during the unwinding. Next slide, please. So here's a timeline of what this looks like from our perspective as it relates to the Consolidated Appropriations Act changes. We, again, December 29th, you see the law was enacted. We are beginning regular meetings with CMS starting this week. And then I will point out the second bullet because we are going to be looking to that one. The 2/15/23, February 15th, 23rd is the bucket that we're falling in. There's sort of an option here for states, depending on how fast they start the unwinding process. I'll show you on the next slide that we have selected option B out of ABC, which CMS has provided to states. But what that means that we'll be initiating renewals in March. And so by February 15th, we need to be able to submit a renewal redistribution plan, our system configuration plan, and our system test plan and results. Those are all very much underway. We're working very closely with Access Health on a lot of these changes, especially as they relate to our shared system and operations for MAGI, Medicaid, and CHIP. And so what does this mean? You see the green star, that's the big date in a lot of people's minds. That is when this provision about continuous enrollment officially expires and terminations may begin. Though as I'll show you on the next slide, which we can go to now, the majority of the people who have been protected during the public health emergency from losing coverage, they will actually start to lose coverage at the end of April. States had 3 options for how to conduct the unwinding, A, B, or C, and I don't have A or C showing on the screen here, but if you can imagine all of the same images that you're seeing in option B shifted 1 month to the left, that's option A, and shifted 1 month to the right is option C. So we're in the middle, we're taking the middle ground here, and what that means is that we will start our renewal process for Medicaid households in the beginning of March. This is typically a 60-day period, the first step of which is we identify everyone who is due for a renewal and put them through a passive renewal process to see if we can use data sources to be able to confirm their ongoing eligibility without the need for clients to take any steps to reestablish eligibility. We have recently made some pretty significant changes to the logic behind how our passive renewal process works. And the first results are back in since we implemented this in December. And it's cautiously optimistic that this is going to really help both the state and clients by maximizing our use of data sources to confirm eligibility, anticipating that tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of households will not have to go through a manual process, which is a serious assist to us when it comes to operational planning and should hopefully mitigate some of the potential decline in enrollment that we would see if everyone had to go through a manual process. However, that being said, there's going to be March is the first month in which we will be sending out a full-blown renewal to the entire public health emergency extension population, in addition to those households who have continued to routinely reestablish eligibility during the public health emergency. In a way, this is almost sort of a double volume amount of people going through the renewal process. It's very similar to sort of open enrollment levels of activity that we're projecting over the course of this 12-month period. And the first households that will lose eligibility at the end of April, if they do not complete the renewal process or are otherwise ineligible will come at the end of April. This is also probably when we'll start to see the first rounds of people moving into covered Connecticut, and opportunities for us to see if anyone is eligible for a qualified health plan if their income has increased and they're no longer eligible for Medicaid. This process plays out over 12 months. There are 12 months of renewal cycles going out. Those are the dark blue dots. And then you see the light blue ones at the end. CMS has recognized that it takes some time to wrap up a renewal process once it has been initiated. And so we have 2 additional months in which to complete the renewals that may have been submitted in prior months. Next slide, please. So I'd like to talk just briefly about some of the communications work that we're doing related to the public health emergency unwinding. The first thing is our Update Us So We Can Update You campaign. This is a heavy emphasis on having clients update their contact information. This is sort of the key to success in many ways, is that folks need to be able to receive the messages that we send to them. They need to know when their renewal is due, and they need to know when to take action. And all of this is contingent on us having accurate information about the household's location and contact. So if you go to the next slide, you can see some of the ways that we've been going through this campaign. We have gone through streaming audio. We have just started a social media campaign. We have what is labeled out-of-home media, posters or billboards around the state on the sides of buses. We're also putting it into print in certain newspapers, Intercity News and La Voz Hispana. And through those channels, we're hoping and have seen increased activity in people updating contact information as in response to this campaign. And you've got a couple slides. I'll do the next one. This is an example of what this looks like in print, really asking people to go to this website that we have set up, which I can show you, which has a little bit more information about just the best doorway to go to update your information. As you are likely aware, in addition to many of our clients going through our shared doorway at Access Health, DSS also administers other programs and other facets of Medicaid where the optimal way to update your contact information is directly with DSS. It's a little bit confusing. There are really 2 doors. For a lot of people, Access Health door is the best way, and contact information that is updated through Access Health in the HIC system passes to DSS, but it doesn't always go the other way. So if someone is only on SNAP, they're really better off coming to the Department of Social Services to update their contact information, because that's the only way we're going to see it. And so this webpage helps direct clients to the right place to update their contact information. We've added QR codes to a lot of these to facilitate quick relocation to that website. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see what these billboards are looking like. I just saw one on the way home the other day, which was pretty exciting to see one in New Haven. And these ones, I believe, are in Hartford or Bridgeport. Just examples of the messaging that is out there. This was designed with a marketing firm, and I think you'll see some common colors between Access Health's orange and DSS's blue that was woven into part of the communication plan. And on the next slide, I think we have some buses where you can see what it's looking like on buses in Bridgeport. Next slide. We've also been working with our partners at CHNCT to be able to do direct member communications through email and robocalls. Again, emphasize the need to update contact information. There's a bunch of data on this screen about the success rates of our email campaigns and the automated calls that have been overlapped, in particular during our October and December rounds. Pretty good success rates when you consider that the automated call campaign was only done for people who didn't respond to the email or open their emails. And this is, sort of all hands on deck right now for update your contact information. The next phase of communications is going to be alerting people to the end of the continuous enrollment period and the need to take action when we ask people to take action. It will not be beneficial for everybody to become running in on March 31st to say, I need to preserve my benefits, because we won't be able to take an action on their case until it's actually time for their renewal. So it's a challenging message. It's be alert, but don't panic. Wait for us to communicate with you and then respond bond. So if anyone's got a great way of distilling that into the smallest possible way to say it, that is what we're working on right now. Next slide, please. I also just wanted to highlight that we have established a website, ct.gov/PHE, which we are hoping to be a significant communication medium, both potentially to clients, but also for partners, about how to stay on the messages that we're trying to communicate out. And a couple pictures of the next slides, I will candidly admit that the website already needs updates because the federal law has changed. We have spent some time talking about the Federal Public Health Emergency Declaration, which is no longer of as significant importance as it had been. So we need to refine our message a little bit to talk about how continuous enrollment is ending, what that means for individuals and for partners, and how to communicate that. So this webpage is sort of in a soft launch. We haven't widely touted it yet as we continue to work on the content that is there. Here's just a quick snapshot of the landing page. We're trying to keep it as simple as possible, and direct people into one of two buckets, right? If you're a client who gets benefits versus a program partner. In the next two slides, we can if we go to the next slide, we can see what the client landing page looks like. We have an FAQ and directions for, again, how to update your contact information. And we'll be continuing to update this with the core messaging that we're looking to direct to clients. And then on the next slide, you'll see the last tab, which is a toolkit that we're establishing for partners to be able to leverage. This has the Update Us, We Can Update You campaign in various formats, sample emails, flyers, phone messaging that we're encouraging partners to be able to use, as well as communications around what, again, was the public health emergency, which we need to now update to refer to the continuous enrollment provision ending, and how to communicate outbound on that next stage of things. And that's the last slide that I've got here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Peter. A lot of information there. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
So I welcome questions from anybody in the group.
I have a question, Charlie, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
So, this is a great overview. Thank you for providing this. I was curious, obviously doing this work will probably give you the exact answer to the question I'm going to ask, but do you have a sense of how many people will lose coverage in Connecticut?
It's a great question. I do not have an answer to that in my fingertips. This is something we're still honestly still evaluating, right? Because we made those changes to the system very recently. We know that we have out of date income information for a lot of people. So that's a real challenge in projecting. We can take sort of off the top the people who are going to be able to passively renew, and we're finalizing the projections of how many people are going to be able to do that. And that's going to leave the rest of the cohort to see whether we have enough information to estimate where they're going to land in the future. People's incomes do fluctuate, so it's a challenge. And we also know that some folks are going to lose coverage simply because they won't go through the process. So I do not have a number to put to that yet, but it is something that we're going to continue to work on seeing. And obviously, when the first month goes through, we'll start to have a pretty good idea, although I'd rather have an estimate before that.
Do you have a sense of, at the beginning of the emergency, how many people came on kind of rapidly at that time?
Yes, we have monthly enrollment data to show overall program growth. What we don't have good information on is who is new versus who is new to the entire program versus someone who may have had a gap in coverage and come back on. We have that enrollment info month by month. So we can sort of see the rolling tally of how many people are in Husky. We also know how many people have had their coverage extended due to the pandemic rules. So the population that we're calling the extension population that has had their coverage preserved and may have otherwise lost it for failure to take an action or for a reported change is around 420 to 430,000 individuals. And
So
the vast majority are the Magi households that come through the Access Health channel.
That's the scale, Commissioner, that we're looking at. So we're over 1 million enrollment now in Husky and CHIP, and we were in the mid 800,000s prior to the pandemic, around 860,000. So if you think about, just in answer to your question, that's kind of the universe that we're thinking about is at risk. We didn't have covered Connecticut, but people's incomes are rebounding. So there are a lot of people who are at risk of no longer being eligible.
Thank you.
So, Commissioner, one of our primary objectives is to minimize any gap in coverage for that population, the 428,000 or so. We know at Access Health from experience, a lot of folks move, especially in that cohort. So they may not get the information to come in and renew. And if they have a chronic illness or they are on a maintenance drug, the first time they may find out that they've lost Medicaid coverage is when they go to renew their coverage, renew a prescription at CVS or Walgreens. And when we used to get those calls, we still get them, and that's when they find out that they have no coverage. At that point, we work closely with DSS, the pharmacy, and the individual, and we don't get off the phone until they actually get the prescription that they need to maintain their health. So right now we are working with our call center to keep it staffed over the next 12 months. Normally, after open enrollment, the call center they shift down the staffing because it's not necessary. But now we're going to keep it at the same level for the next 12 months to ensure that we have the operational support as individuals come in and renew their Medicaid or become QHP or become eligible for Cover Connecticut. So, but our primary goal is to minimize the risk of anyone going with a gap in coverage. And if they do, we'll do our best to get them back on track.
Thank you. Stephen Hernandez had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you think of, and James, that was a great example, I think, of when it is that someone realizes that they've lost vital coverage. So when you think of points of care and points of service, a pharmacy, another agency, perhaps that, we're talking about the same families oftentimes that are moving through our systems, whether it's the public, the private, or the nonprofit sectors. Are there any other, is there any other collaboration that you're doing to make sure that maybe you proactively are reaching out to these folks at other points of service and other points of care proactively before their care runs out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, James, I don't know if you've got something you want to answer that. I'll defer to you.
Sure, thank you much. I'm going to ask Tammy to talk about the partnerships that we have across the state of Connecticut. In terms of, we have thousands of partnerships, and most of the community health centers, as well as the FQHCs, we partner with them, and we also have a number of navigators who are located in the communities most impacted. Also, we share out collateral information with them for them to get the word out. And a lot of the that 428,000, they have certain community organizations they go to for guidance and help across their entire lives. So we are working very closely with them to make sure the word gets out. And we also have CSCs, Certified Application Counselors, who can enroll individuals in those community centers as well. So again, the intent here is to minimize the impact this could happen on anyone at all, to minimize the any gap in coverage as all. But Tammy, can you give an update to Tammy where we are in terms of number of partners we have across the state of Connecticut with the community-based organizations?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Tammy Hendricks, Director of Health Equity and Outreach. As James stated, we do work with over 1,600. Right now, I think we're closer to 1,800 community partners throughout the state. We're constantly giving them updates. We've been updating them on the unwinding since last year. So we continue to give them information, trainings, right? Getting CACs in their organization so that they're able to enroll folks as they come in for other services. But we also work with them on giving them updates throughout the year. We work with them on in-person enrollments, right? So if their organization is interested in having us host a fair, we're able to do that as well. So we're very much embedded in the communities, training them, training the CACs, updating them consistently, and having that presence of in-person enrollment opportunities.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you for the question, Stephen. At the risk of cutting off debate, we have a couple of items left on our agenda, and I want to make sure we give them the time. So, Peter, thank you again for joining us today. And I will turn the floor over to Susan.
Thank you. And I will go very quickly so that I can cede most of the time to Julie for the adverse selection report. Just to give everyone a quick update, we've been talking a little bit today about the Health Plan Benefits and Qualifications Advisory Committee. They do very important work on the Qualified Health Plan certification and, most importantly, the standard plan designs each year. So the committee had their first meeting at the beginning of January to start the work for 2024. An important note for this year is that the insurance department has changed their filing deadline for the plans for rate and form filings, and our filing deadline mirrors that. It will be June 1st this year instead of July 1st. So we are having to condense the time that's usually taken for the recommendations that the committee makes and the board approval. So we are hoping, even though Charlie, I know you and James spoke about us trying to have less meetings this year, we probably will need a short special meeting in March to have the board approve the recommendations that are hopefully available by then by the committee, so that we can give the carriers enough time to do their work so that we can get our solicitation and application out as quickly as possible. Based on the work at the first meeting, using Wakely's data and the draft federal tools, the federal actuarial value calculator, it looks like we do need to make changes to nearly all of the standard plans. But as always, we try to keep the impact to consumers as minimal as possible. So the approach to start with, as we did last year, is to start with just the smallest changes possible to the maximum out of pockets, if that will work to bring them into compliance. And there is it doesn't impact our standard plans, but the state passed legislation last year to require the carriers to add health enhancement plan type incentives for consumers to utilize preventive services, which we all know are really important. And Martin, if you just go to the next slide, just quickly, this shows the calendar. The draft guidance from the federal government were released in December. The committee started its work in January, and the plan is to hopefully present the recommendations from the committee to the board in March so that we can get our materials out to the carriers, all driving to that June 1st rate and form filing deadline and filing with Access Health. So I will pause if there are any questions and then try to leave the rest of the time for Julie. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Let's move directly to Julie and get her report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Marcin, why don't we go ahead and advance to the 3 more slides to the colored blocks. So the adverse selection study requires the review, go ahead and another 2. The review of 3 potential areas of adverse selection. The statute requires that we review, and one more slide, grandfathered versus non-grandfathered plans. And in prior years, we found that there really aren't any material grandfathered plans in the marketplace anymore. Grandfathered plans are plans that were established prior to the enactment of the Affordable Care Act in 2010, and so really pose no longer any selection risk. The second requirement is to review on versus off exchange plan selections. Third, we also review selection in the small group market with self-funded plan options. And then also, just to round out the study, we look at other elements that may be impacting the marketplace and driving adverse selection. So on the next slide, we'll go ahead and look at some of the other components. The pandemic continues to impact healthcare 3 years later. In 2021, we saw an increase in services from the 2020 deferral, as well as policies to reduce cost sharing for testing and vaccinations. On the legislative stage, the Biden administration passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which will continue the enhanced subsidies initially offered under the American Rescue Plan Act, which will provide stability in the marketplace through 2025. The current congressional environment may limit new legislation at the federal level. However, regulatory activity will continue to have an impact. As the state enters its legislative session, we're not aware of any major health policy initiatives right now. Judicial action will continue to transform the landscape, with recent cases impacting reproductive health care, preventive coverage, and out-of-network coverage. And just as an overall undercurrent, the impact of inflation and ongoing staffing issues impacting many healthcare providers will continue to create upward pressure on healthcare costs. So now we'll go ahead, as Marston's showing, and look at the second component of the adverse selection study, on versus off exchange selection. We started our analysis by looking at risk transfer payments from the Federal Risk Transfer Program, and the Federal Risk Adjustment Program seeks to equalize risk in the market amongst issuers. It does not reduce adverse risks in the overall marketplace. The graph on the left demonstrates a deterioration in the average risk of enrollees off exchange, which are represented by the light blue bars, while on exchange enrollee risk profiles are presented by the dark blue bars. In 2021, the average off exchange enrollee average risk scores are 119% of the market average, while those on exchange are just 2% below the market average. The deterioration in risk is likely explained by the contraction in off-exchange enrollment that has occurred. The proportion of total market enrollment off exchange has declined from 35% of the total marketplace in 2017 to just under 10% in 2022, which are reflected by the light blue portions of the bars on the graph on the right. In 2021, the off exchange enrollment was just under 10,000 enrollees. If we go to the next slide, we can see how the Federal Risk Adjustment Program interacts with to mitigate risk. So the graph on the right illustrates the simple loss ratios, which are claims over premium for on versus off exchange plans before and after risk adjustment transfers, compared to the 80% loss ratio benchmark, which is the red line. So this is the loss ratio is just a financial metric indicating what percentage of premiums was needed to pay claims. In 2021, comparing the two gray bars on the left of the graph, the on-exchange loss ratio increased from a pre-risk transfer basis of 91% to 93% on a post-risk transfer basis, thus reflecting transfers from on-exchange plans to off-exchange plans in response to their higher risk profile. So the 2021 ratios for off-exchange decreased post-risk adjustment from 91% to 75% off exchange. So as one looks at the loss ratios, there's been a lot of volatility over the years with the pandemic really providing lower loss ratios with the light blue. And then as services and care was sought in 2021, we're seeing a much higher loss ratios with the gray lines. but overall, the risk adjustment program is helping to mitigate costs. So let's go ahead, Marcin, and advance 4 slides to the recommendation section. So basically, in our surveying of issuers, one of the key components that they felt was important was stability in the marketplace. A lot of legislative action and a lot of, at the federal and state level can create issues, and anything that they see, as far as mitigating that disruption will help ensure a strong marketplace. In their consideration, we'll just continue to monitor the off-exchange marketplace as it continues to shrink. The special enrollment periods that are often associated with different legislative actions, such as the American Rescue Plan Act, and trying to mitigate the use of those to ensure ensure the validity of those eligible. There's also additional mechanisms that we've talked about in the past for stabilizing the individual and small group markets, which are the 1332 waivers. Some have suggested the reinsurance program, but with the expansion of enhanced subsidies that kind of mitigates the need for a reinsurance program. One can also consider expansion of the Covered Connecticut program or pursuing a type of public option hybrid focused on mitigating provider costs. So let's go on to the third one, and that is the self-funding and the impact on the small group marketplace. From the graph, you can see going from the bottom up to the most recent year at the top of the graph, there's been a significant decrease in enrollment in the small group marketplace. And this is something that we've seen nationwide, though Connecticut, it seems to be most severe. There was a 13% decrease in 2020 enrollment, with a further decrease of more than 10% expected for 2022. And with the announcement of issuer market exits for 2023, this will mean that more than 20% of the current enrolled lives will need to seek new coverage in the coming year. This disenrollment may be attributed to many market drivers, and may not just be self-funding, but also potential economic or legislative options. So for this time in the study, the small group market is actually now smaller than the individual market on a fully insured basis. We did survey several issuers about what they're seeing in the marketplace. Many said there is an interest in self-funding or level funding. Some plans can see decreases of more than 10% to 10%. And they do often seek stop-loss coverage in the range of $30,000 to $50,000 per individual, which is well above the statutory requirement in Connecticut of $20,000. We also asked about different programs that can allow small employers to let their employees seek out opportunities in the individual marketplace. There are some interest, but still with the relationship of small group premiums to individual premiums and the complexity of these programs, they really have not yet taken off. Let's go ahead and skip the MEP survey and go on to the Kaiser Family Foundation survey. So this is a survey that, let's see, go back one more slide, Marcin, thank you. That just shows nationally the interest in self-funding versus and level funding in the marketplace. So self-funding is where an employer will hire a third-party administrator to adjudicate claims, and they will be directly responsible for claim fluctuations month to month. Whereas level funding looks more like a fully insured plan, where premiums are held level and claim volatility is carried in a reserve account, which would be reconciled at the end of the contract term. So you can see, you know, self-funding continues to have some interest, and in 2022, there was actually a decrease in selection of self-funding plan, likely because of the volatility in the marketplace as post-pandemic. Level funding is still, you know, we saw a huge increase in interest from 2020 to 2021. As we look into 2022, it still remains of high interest nationally, but actually dropped 1% from the prior year. So there definitely is, you know, pressure in the marketplace with regards to self-funding. So from a conclusion perspective, since we really can't access self-funding statistics directly because since they're not fully insured plans, they're not overseen by the Connecticut Insurance Department, but are reviewed by the Department of Labor. And so, you know, the decreasing small market is a concern and something that we'll want to continue to watch. What we can observe is how this will impact the small group marketplace and how it may drive premiums. In the past 3 years, we've seen requests of, you know, double-digit increases from 10 to 15%. But the Connecticut Insurance Department has been able to mitigate those rate increases from a range of about 4 to 8% over the past 3 years. But significant increases in premiums will, you know, push employers to consider, you know, other options such as self-funding or looking at the individual marketplace. At this time, small group premiums in Connecticut continue to remain below individual premiums, but there are some states or some counties and some plans where individual premiums are actually less than small group premiums. So that concludes the study. I apologize, we're a little bit over. There is a fuller report, so I don't know if there are any questions.
Thank you, Julie, very much. Are there any questions? It's the larger study, very helpful. Thank you for all of this and for the walkthrough this morning. I think, Susan, we have a vote to take, if I'm correct. Susan?
That is correct, just to accept the report so then we can file it with the legislature as required.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm slightly worried that we may be losing a quorum here. So let's make sure we do that vote and have enough votes to adjourn this meeting as well. Can I have a nomination to accept the study from Wakely?
So moved by Ted.
Thanks, Ted. Second?
Seconded by Grant.
Thank you, Grant. Charlie Klippel, yes.
Mr. Chair, is there discussion on the motion?
Sorry, any discussion? Thank you. Charlie Klippel, yes.
Thank you. Paul Philpott?
Yes.
Claudia Gualtieri? Dietrich Gifford?
Yes.
Ron Ritter?
Yes.
Steven Hernandez? Andrea Barton Reeves? Theodore Doolittle?
Yes.
Cece Woods?
Yes.
Thomas McNeil?
Yes.
And Matthew Bratman. Thank you. Did have enough votes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I think, Susan, once again, we may be at a point where we are asking you to come back and talk to us about the.
I think we'll skip it for today. That's what we had talked about with James, and I can always address items at the next meeting.
And James, can we wrap
Absolutely.
this? All right.
Yes,
so,
we can. Thank you.
Again, thank you all. Packed agenda, and I really appreciate everybody's attention and patience. Can I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved, Cece.
Thank you, Cece.
Second, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Charlie Klippel, yes.
Thank you, Paul Philpott,
Yes.
Claudio Gualtieri, Deidre Gifford,
Yes.
Grant Ritter,
Yes.
Steven Hernandez, Andrea Barton Reeves, Peter Doolittle,
Yes.
Cece Woods,
Yes.
Thomas McNeil,
Yes.
and Matthew Brackman.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. See you next month. And I appreciate everyone's attention today. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.